You know, having made the change over from covering pop culture to covering horror and pro wrestling, I assumed I would be making more horror videos and relax.
Slap nuts.
I'm working on a Friday the 13th Part 4 retrospective, which won't be ready by the 40th anniversary, but it'll be out next week. Today, though, we're going to discuss Tony Khan, AEW, the CM Punk and Jack Perry situation, because I have a lot of thoughts on it, and I want to share them with you. So, let's go. I'll see you on the other side of the intro. So we all know Tony Khan. Tony Khan, the son of Shad Khan, owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, in 2019 said, "Daddy, I want a wrestling company, and I want a wrestling company right now." And we got AEW. Obviously, folks, you know that's pretty much not the real story, but there's a modicum of truth behind there, because Tony Khan is a man-child. And I say that as somebody who is literally off camera surrounded by collectible action figures and such, but I'm also married, family, that kind of thing, and you know, have a life outside of this. So I just want to look at Tony Khan for a moment. And I don't know Tony Khan. I've never interacted with Tony Khan. Appearances are everything when you're in a position like that. And coming from somebody who spent, like I said, the better part of a decade on the indies and ran a promotion for a year until it was financially no longer viable to, and then walked away from it and just went back out and did my own thing again. This is not how a wrestling promoter is supposed to conduct himself. A good look for a wrestling promoter, especially on the national level, when you are trying to present yourself at the same level as WWE. And I'm not, and I've stated this before, a huge WWE guy. I was always more of a WCW guy. I grew up with that style, and I watched WWF as a child. Of course I did. It was the biggest thing. You know, it was way bigger than Crockett Promotions, but I just always gravitated towards that gritty, more realistic style more. And, you know, not to mention the cartoon gimmicks when WCW took over NWA and Crockett Promotions and all. That aside, back to Tony Khan. Wrestling promoter, not a good look for you to be the way you are. Let's just say the way you are. You act like a child. You cannot handle any criticism or critique at all.
It's fucking bullshit.
Your minions in the locker room, that they're not your friends, Tony. Oh my God, the boys aren't your friends. You're the promoter. You're the boss. They're your employees. You can be friendly with them. Obviously, it's paramount to have a great working relationship with your talent and be able to openly communicate with them and tell them when this is a great idea. I want to see you do that. I want to see this on TV. Or, look, this idea is the drizzling shits. It's not going to get over. Don't do it. It's a bad idea, or it's in poor taste. That being said, folks, and trust me, AEW does a lot of things, and not necessarily in poor taste, but are just trash. Angles, booking. They have people behind the scenes that have literal decades in the wrestling business, and this young, stupid talent will not listen to them, will not take their advice. You know, that's when you get to the WWE, you've got the agents that, you know, they're backstage. These are your, you know, your go-betweens, and it behooves you as a young talent to listen to an agent who has, you know, been there, done that, and proven that they can make it at the top. They're trying to help you. They're not trying to keep you down. Now, granted, there are a lot of the metaphorical crabs in the bucket in the wrestling business, just like there are on YouTube. They'll succeed, and then they'll pull the ladder up so nobody else can take their spot, which in the wrestling business, your time is fleeting. It can end like that. Just ask guys who've suffered career-ending injuries and haven't been able to come back and change their style completely, a la Steve Austin, to still have, you know, a good run post-injury. So these agents, these guys backstage, they're trying to help you. Don't take their advice and blow it off and go out and I'm going to jump off a ladder back first onto a coffin. Ha ha ha! I'm Darby Allin. I'm so edgy. It's all been done. You're not reinventing the wheel. What you're doing is you're taking years off the back end of your life for a cheap pop on TV. Somebody's going to play, they're going to repost it on Twitter, Wow, you're famous for 4 seconds, Darby. Congratulations. You would have had a better opportunity at a career if you just would have embraced the fact that you're John Podesta's son. Will Osprey. I didn't know who the hell Will Osprey was before, I think it was Forbidden Door, or one of the crossover pay-per-views with New Japan. I've been aware of New Japan Pro Wrestling for decades. I've seen guys from New Japan come over to, back WCW and do some cool things, but I was never once like, man, I gotta go watch me some New Japan. It's cool to see them in the spots, but I want to see my guys. I want to see the homegrown talent. I really, unless they're going to join the roster full time and I can get invested in them that way, I don't care. I like this kind of wrestling. This is the kind of wrestling I'm going to watch. And I don't care about Japanese wrestling. I find everything about the way that they portray it in AEW especially boring, as just insufferable to watch. And it's the same way with the New Japan clips I see. It's like, yep, they're going to stand in the middle of the ring and trade chops and no sell it. And then the audience sits on their hands and doesn't. I don't care. That's not for me. If that's for you and you enjoy it, I'm not going to stop you from enjoying it. And don't let my critique of it, affect your enjoyment, because this is my personal feelings on it. Is it huge with the audience over there? Yes. Enjoy it, please, by all means. But Will Osprey, you're not good for business, bud. You're, 38, 39 years old, a bunch of injuries already, and you're not going to last. The style isn't sustainable. And his comments about Triple H, I'll play the audio right here.
Seeing as the guy that said it is only in the position he is in because he was grinding on the boss's daughter. You are in no position to tell me what the grind is all about.
That is an absolute joke. Triple H, when he made the comments about guys not being able to hack it on the road, he never mentioned Will Ospreay's name. He never mentioned his name. Ospreay's comeback is a limp-wristed attempt at a gotcha moment to get himself over with the internet marks. And the internet wrestling community is garbage. I have no desire to be part of that. So Will Ospreay, my advice to you, and you're far more successful in this business than I ever would have been. Hats off to you. You're a talent, but as far as building yourself a lasting role in the United States, it's not going to happen, because after AEW inevitably goes the way of the dodo, you're going to have to either go back to Japan or crawl to Triple H and beg for a job, which we know you're not going to do. So that's fine. You can go back to Japan, and everybody over here that thought you were great for 5 minutes will forget about you and move on to the next shiny dangling set of keys that some other promoter jingles. And you all, the internet marks, like babies, go, ooh! That's what happens. That's what happens. So the attention span is about 5 seconds. Speaking of things not lasting 5 seconds, if you're Jack Perry, you sure know how to end your career. I know. One of the AEW pillars, if one of the pillars of your company is, the size of a My Buddy Chucky doll, you're off on the wrong foot anyway. And this guy is not a professional wrestler. He's not. He's not a professional wrestler. Jack Perry's a joke. Child of privilege, never been told no. Joins the wrestling business, of course. Tony Khan, probably fat to, 90210 as a kid. So here he is now. Oh, I'm going to sign Luke Perry's son, and off name recognition. And look what happens. Look what happens when somebody, and again, folks, not a big CM Punk guy. I do have respect for him, especially a little more now. But Jack Perry wants to act like a grown man and puff up on him and just not shut his mouth and listen. That's shut your mouth, open your ears, and listen. A veteran is telling you something. This is why I hate the wrestling business now, because there's no respect. There's no respect from young guys like this. There's not. This kid is an asshole. And now, instead of being fired and out of a job because he cost Tony Khan his cash cow, he's over in Japan getting paid by Tony Khan and New Japan. So what was the lesson that he learned from this? This entire clip of the altercation backstage, which I wish I could show you. I'll put some stills up, but I can't show it because Tony Khan, they'll DMCA it and I'll get a strike for it, and it's not worth it. It's not worth it. I just look at this entire situation, and I wanted to like AEW, and I did like AEW for about a couple months. I was like, all right, I can watch this. This is all right. I see some familiar faces. It's got a lot by the way of WCW going for it, which I don't care. Wrestling died when Vince bought WCW and ECW. Wrestling has been dead since 2001. We're just sitting here watching the husk of it burn, and spare me, it's the new era, it's the new era, it's the new era thing. We'll see how long the new era lasts when Triple H does something that these marks don't like and they attack him online and it's just Vince 2.0 and blah, blah, blah. That's exactly what'll happen. That's just my thoughts on the entire situation. I think that Tony Khan is a child. Tony Khan has no place running a wrestling company, and it's a detriment to the business. And the people coming up on the indies now that want to get to this next level, this is what they have to work with. This is what they have to deal with. If you make it to that level, if you're successful enough, if you're lucky enough, if you play your cards right, stay injury free, you can go to AEW as a 5'6", 140 pounder and be called a main event talent and go over on guys that outweigh you by 175 pounds, look like He-Man action figures, because Tony Khan identifies more with the little runts than he does the big guys. And I know what a lot of you are going to be thinking. Oh, just a Vince McMahon, big sweaty man, blah, blah, blah. No. Wrestlers are supposed to be larger than life characters. I don't believe that Darby Allin could beat Brian Cage in a real fight. You need to sell me that in the ring. You've never done that once. You've seen, and this, I'll say this last thing, and it's kind of a shot at Orange Cassidy, somebody who I liked for about 2 seconds because I like his entrance music. I do. But watching him, he's as bad for the business as Joey Ryan. In a different way. He is as bad for the business as Joey Ryan. And I don't mean the things Joey Ryan did away from the wrestling business. I mean the garbage tier shit he did in the ring. Pockets, as Jim Cornette calls him, Orange Cassidy, physically dominated Big Bill, Big Cass, whatever you want to call him, in a match. Like, Cass got no offense on him whatsoever. Like, maybe a couple spots. And Orange Cassidy dominated him for an entire match. The following week, I believe it was on Dynamite the following week, Orange Cassidy wrestled El Vikingo del Hijo, one of those guys. Wrestles him. They're both about 175 pounds. He was in peril the entire match. You tell me how good that booking is. You tell me how that makes sense. By that standard you've set, so El Vikingo del Hijo can now go back and just physically dominate Big Cass. You see the psychology behind that. It's the same thing when they want to have Tessa Blanchard go over on Brian Cage. It's ridiculously stupid booking, and this is the problem with modern wrestling. This is the problem with modern wrestling right now. You know, and I love Rhea Ripley, and Rhea Ripley, I've kind of gone off on a tangent here, but this is what you get with me. Rhea Ripley saying, I want an intergender match with Randy Orton. Rhea Ripley looks huge next to Becky Lynch. Absolutely. Rhea Ripley's built. She's very athletic. She's muscular. She's a gorgeous woman. She's a great wrestler. A wonderful talent. Probably top 5 in the company. She says, I want an intergender match with Randy Orton, who's 6'6", 265 pounds, and dwarfs a lot of the men. And they would have you believe that it is feasible for her to physically dominate him. It's some, you know, and I'm not talking fetish stuff. That aside, I'm talking in a professional wrestling match. And they're expecting you to buy that. That's, to me, that's as bad as Orange Cassidy physically controlling an entire match against Big Bill, Brian Cage, you know, any of these guys that are built like He-Man action figures and can actually wrestle. That's the stupidity that is AEW. This all starts and ends with Tony Khan. Again, we are, you know, it all comes back to somebody who spent his entire childhood as probably a loner, no friends. He said his fantasy booking. You know, I did the same thing, and I still do with WWF No Mercy on my N64. I've recreated the WCW roster from 01 to from 01 back to 95, you know, down to Eric Watson, guys like that. and I do fantasy booking on there. But did I ever do that when I had the book and the promotion I was with? No. No, I talked to the other guys, the other promoters, and I'm like, okay, let's make this make sense if I didn't, if I couldn't put it together. So it was never like, I'm just going to do this because it was in my head. And Tony Khan, dude, the look on Shivani's face, I've seen the clips on Twitter this morning. Bro, you have a great play-by-play guy in Tony Schiavone. I grew up as a teenager and as a younger kid listening to Tony Schiavone, back in the Fed, then WCW, and now in AEW. And you've got this man sitting there at an announce table looking like he wants to go back to calling minor league baseball again. I don't know where you go from here, but with your piss-poor attendance, your absolute circus of a locker room backstage, this company is headed for the iceberg. It's, and I might be a little behind with that statement. This was the iceberg. This was the iceberg. Let's see how long it takes for the ship to sink. And you can call me an AEW hater all you want. I spent $90 on the fucking garbage video game and never once played it after I listened to everybody else talk about how shit it was and how broken it was. I'm like, I'll just reach right down here and turn on my N64 that I've had for 20-some years and just play that, as opposed to the $90 game I bought that is broken, basically. I'm not. I've given you a fair shot. And you can call me a Fed Mark. I watch WrestleMania. I had a lot of my friends that I stream with and I'm legit friends with that were like, this didn't feel like WrestleMania. I'm like, no, it felt like WrestleMania. We may not have liked the matches, but it felt like WrestleMania. That's something that Tony Khan will never experience. You can call the London show whatever you want, but that's not WrestleMania. Tony Khan is doing everything he can to put over the WWE by focusing his airtime on one of their superstars, which makes absolutely no sense from a business standpoint. If you're trying to garner ratings that they're getting, using their name constantly, putting them over because Punk is over there now, and we all saw WrestleMania and how that turned out and how Punk is getting ready to get back in the ring. So you're going to build this whole angle around a guy that's in another company and FTR and the Young Bucks and Jack Perry, who's wrestling in Japan, but he's still on your payroll. That screams of desperate, horrible business being done by Tony Khan, and it just proves further his ineptitude when it comes to the wrestling business. Don't think I forgot about Samantha Irvin crying while she announced Cody Rhodes as the winner at WrestleMania. That single-handedly the most unprofessional piece of ring announcing I've ever seen before in my life. And it all stems back to these folks in the wrestling business now who are basically adult children, and they cry every time something happens. Seth Rollins crying, losing a belt. Cody crying all over the place during every promo, all this, all that. Samantha Irvin crying, announcing. It just is sad, and it's a hilarious look for a business that was built around outlaws and gladiators and, actually tough men, and that's where this is funny, because I had it out with this idiot on in a Facebook post about this, and I said, Samantha Irvin cries. I've never seen Howard Finkel, Tony Chimmel, Justin Roberts, Lillian Garcia, David Pinzer, Gary Michael Capetta, Michael Buffer, Bruce Buffer. Never seen any of those guys cry while they're announcing a winner. But, I'm a bad person for saying Samantha Irvin shouldn't be blubbering like a toddler, after Cody Rhodes wins the belt. Give me a break. Give me a break. And it's not personal. She seems like a lovely, kind, caring young woman. Next thing is WrestleMania being 2 nights. It doesn't need to be 2 nights. I understand for the fans in attendance, this is an entire experience. It's an entire weekend, They make a big thing out of it. You've got the Hall of Fame, and you got this and that, and WWE World. There is no reason for it to be 2 nights. It ends up like a Two-Face from Seinfeld. Night 1, might look great, and then night 2 is like, ugh. Not to mention the weather you have to deal with in these outdoor venues at the beginning of April. It doesn't need to be 2 nights. Make it 1 night and make it a banger. Every WrestleMania has bad matches throughout history. This at least felt like a WrestleMania, but it still doesn't need to be 2 nights. Casual wrestling fans are gone. That is a thing of the past, and it's because wrestling has become so niche. Look at AEW, what Tony Khan's done over there. These casuals don't care about Japan or Japanese wrestling. They care about American wrestling, what they know, what they grew up with. WWE with 45-minute promos on Raw the night after WrestleMania. Who's tuning in for that? When casual fans tune in, they want to see wrestling. They don't tune in to watch 40-minute promos and not know what's going on because they're a casual. They're not a hardcore fan. And wrestling all around has done a lot to alienate and just basically remove casual fans from the viewing mix altogether. And what we have now is the tribalism that was involved in politics now basically being involved in wrestling much the same way. That's my thoughts on a lot of pro wrestling topics this morning, folks. I'm Etep from the Place to Be Reviews. I've been here with all of yous. If I don't see you, have a great day, a pleasant tomorrow. Remember, if an agent approaches you backstage after a match and you're twirling your hair and acting like a don't be surprised when you get put in a chokehold for talking shit because you're out of place and don't belong there in the first place. I'll see you on the next one.